Hey guys, and welcome to Natural Aesthetics. So the first part of this video just showcases some back training. I'm following the Max OT routine, which is a very low volume, heavy approach to training. I think it's extremely effective for natural bodybuilders and you should give it a try. I've created a spreadsheet where you can easily track your progress on each day, each week of training. You can download that on my blog. The link is in the description box below. So I'm following that program now, and I think my back day only consists of 9 or 10 sets. Starting things with some heavy loose form barbell row and then following up with some stricter movements, seal row, lat pull down and low row, which again is kind of a looser form movement. So I'll follow this probably for another 4 to 5 weeks and then change some of the exercises around, perhaps add in some different variants of the pulls. To be honest, I get probably more than 95% of my daily calorie intake on average from whole foods. I'm not a fan of supplementation at all, and I'll go over more on that subject in another video. But in this particular video I do want to talk about creatine monohydrate, as it's probably one of the only supplements I'd recommend as a natural bodybuilder, and it's one of the only supplements that's been shown to consistently and reliably improve strength and muscle mass. So creatine monohydrate has been used as a supplement over the last 20 to 30 years or so. There have been numerous studies on monohydrate and its effects on the human body, strength and muscle mass. It's the only supplement I'd recommend for natural bodybuilders. And there have been other types of creatine that have been made readily available as supplements, such as creatine lethalester ester. So I'd like to talk about creatine and what it does inside the body and why it can benefit us. So basically, when we contract the muscle, when we perform intense exercise, we utilise what we call ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which contains 3 phosphates. So when we perform an exercise, when we contract the muscle, we utilise this. Upon doing so, we release a phosphate from this, and it creates ADP, adenosine diphosphate, which has 2 phosphates. Now this can't be used to contract muscle, so we have to turn it back into ATP. And we do this by using what we call phosphocreatine, or PCR, which is stored in the muscle. Now, as the PCR stores become depleted during intense exercise, the energy available will diminish, thus making it harder to perform reps and continue lifting the same weight. So the phosphate from PCR is given back to the ADP to turn it back into ATP, which makes it readily available for muscular contraction. So the ability to maintain maximal effort during exercise is dependent on the amount of PCR in the muscles. So we could say that via oral supplementation of creatine, we can improve the amount of PCR available and therefore create a higher turnover of ADP into ATP, making exercise more efficient and making it easier to continue muscular contraction at the same intensity. So in theory, creatine supplementation during training may lead to greater adaptations because of enhanced quality and volume of work performed. So I'd just like to go over some studies that showcase the effects of creatine on human performance, muscle mass and strength. So this study showed that the total work time of all sets of activity were increased by creatine supplementation. Moreover, the results suggested that athletes involved in strenuous activity may benefit from supplementation of creatine. This is another one, and it showcases a literature review of I think 100 different scholarly articles on creatine, and the main points to take home: creatine monohydrate is the most effective ergogenic nutritional supplement currently available in terms of increasing high intensity exercise capacity. There is no scientific evidence that short or long-term use of creatine has any detrimental effects on otherwise healthy individuals. found in young athletes to be okay to supplement creatine and may provide an alternative to potentially dangerous anabolic drugs. This is something that I get asked a lot actually, the loading protocol, dosages of creatine monohydrate. So the quickest way of increasing muscle creatine is to load. So to consume 0.3 grams per kilo per day of creatine monohydrate for at least 3 days, followed by 3 to 5 grams thereafter to maintain elevated stores. So the only reason you would load creatine is to increase the creatine stores quicker. Obviously for supplement companies, you're utilising more of the product and you're going to buy creatine more often. But for me, it really has no benefit, I feel personally, to load creatine. As you can see, this study utilised a lot of different scholarly articles to help them come to conclusions as to the benefits of creatine monohydrate. Here are some other studies. These are all studies that showed a positive influence of creatine on performance or muscle mass. So then a few online. See the effects of creatine supplementation on body composition, strength and sprint performance. So when used with a placebo of glucose, taurine and electrolyte, the creatine promoted greater gains in fat, bone-free mass, isotonic lifting volume and sprint performance during intense resistance / agility training. So this is quite an interesting study. It looks at the effects of low dose creatine supplementation versus creatine loading in college football players. It actually finds, however, that creatine supplementation has no significant group, time or interaction effects on strength, urine creatine levels or percentage of body fat. Significant time effects were found for 1 rep max squat and fat-free mass in all groups, irrespective of creatine loading or low dose. So like I said, there are some studies that show creatine not to have any effects on performance or strength. But if we look further into this study and we look into the discussion at the end, limitations of the study, considerations for future research, and it goes on to say that the study realises that it does not support most of the published literature. Possible reasons are as follows. Pre-exercise hydration may have affected the urine creatine concentration. Creatinine data may have been more substantiated if we had taken muscle biopsy specimen to measure the creatine level of subjects. Moreover, the possibility of non-responders and limited uptake in skeletal muscle are likely. Third, the subjects' diets were not monitored at all, so some of the subjects may have consumed more protein, which could have led to elevated creatine levels prior to supplementation. It goes on to state that the single rep squatting they did might have not been the best way to test the stress on the ATP-PC energy system. So repeated anaerobic resistive exercise could have been used to determine if creatine supplementation can affect creatine phosphate resynthesis, as opposed to just doing the 1 rep max squat attempts. Going back to the non-responders that they mentioned on this test. Now this is an interesting review. Acute creatine monohydrate supplementation, physiological profile of responders versus non-responders. So non-responders are people that don't respond to creatine supplementation. They don't see any positive effects from taking creatine. And this is interesting because this study shows why that may be. So the results support the positive acute response to creatine supplementations with the R group, which are the responders. And these possess a biological profile of the lowest initial levels of creatine and PCR, the greatest percentage of type 2 fibers and the greatest preload muscle fibers, CSA and fat-free mass. Responders also showed improvements in 1 RM leg press scores following the 5-day loading period. Now, NR, non-responders, had higher preload levels of CR and PCR, less type 2 muscle fibers, small preload muscle SA, and lower fat-free mass, and subsequently displayed no improvements in 1 RM strength scores. The results suggest that to be considered a responder to acute oral supplementation, a favourable pre-existing biological profile may determine the final extent to which an individual responds to supplementation. So very interesting Physiological profiles of non-responders appear to be different and may limit their ability to uptake creatine. So this explains why some people tend to respond to creatine and some people don't. So obviously some sort of biological difference within us as humans that determine the effectiveness of creatine supplementation. So the only way of knowing if you're a responder or non-responder of creatine monohydrate, other than using this expensive equipment and testing to find out, is just to try it for yourself. Buy some creatine monohydrate, use perhaps 3 to 5 grams a day, and see what happens over the next few weeks. So to sum up, creatine monohydrate would be the only supplement I'd really consider using on a consistent basis. Really the only supplement out there that's been shown on a consistent basis to have a positive effect on muscle mass, strength and performance. So the next video I'm going to talk a little bit more about supplementation, why I don't supplement with anything else really. So thanks for watching guys, appreciate all your continued support. If you have any questions or queries regarding the video or any other topics, then please feel free to put a comment in the comments section below. Check out all my other social media. Don't forget to subscribe and stay strong.